Chapter 20 of The House with the Twisting Passage by Marion St. John Webb. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Zanusha. The House with the Twisting Passage by Marion St. John Webb. Part 3. Jenny's Luck. Chapter 20. The lights go out in the windows. The happy times Jenny was having with her friends came to a sudden and unexpected ending on the arrival one morning of Aunt Emma with the swinging earrings. She arrived at 12:30 in time for luncheon, and at 5:30, as soon as tea was over, she started back for Putney and took Jenny with her. It was in vain that Jenny pleaded with Uncle Nichol to try to persuade Aunt Abby not to send her away. "I'm so happy here. Oh, I don't want to go, Uncle Nichol, please, please," she begged. Uncle Nichol took his feet down from the hob and said he would see what could be done, and then went in search of Aunt Abby. But 2 minutes later he returned, shaking his head. "No use, Jenny, my dear," he said. "But it's only for a little time you'll be gone. Only a week or so." "I'm so afraid," said Jenny, "that everything won't be the same when I come back." "They never are in this world," said Uncle Nichol, sinking into his chair and putting his feet up on the hob again. "But I shouldn't worry about that, my dear. Things will change, but don't take no notice of them. I don't. Just look at when this house was all changed, last time you was away. They thought they was going to change me, turn me out of this kitchen, away from the places I like and what I'm used to. But they couldn't do it. I wouldn't take no notice of their changes, but just went on as if nothing had happened. I can't abide change. I like what I'm used to, and I'm going on with what I'm used to, and aren't going to take no notice of them whatever." "But it's different with you, Uncle Nichol," began Jenny, when the voice of Aunt Abby interrupted her. "Jenny, Jenny," she called, "come along quick and get your things on, or you'll make your Aunt Emma lose her train." With desperation in her heart, Jenny rushed upstairs and said a hurried good-bye to each of her friends who happened to be in. She left messages for the others. "I shall be back again soon," said Jenny. "I will see you all again when I come back, won't I?" But she went away full of doubts and fears, in spite of Aunt Abby's saying, "Oh, I expect it will all be the same, child, but we don't know what's to be done for certain." And she went on talking to Aunt Emma about some letter she had had from the family. "Aunt Emma's going to bring you back again soon, so be a good girl while you're away." So Jenny went back to Putney and tried hard to be a good girl, though it was sometimes difficult. Aunt Emma was patient and kind, and talkative as usual. But Jenny hated the stuffy little house and the flimsy tables more than ever. The only comfort she got for herself was by going over and over again in her mind the things that had been told to her by Miss Ruby and Black Jack and Miss Primrose and all the rest of them in the old house. "I knew it couldn't last forever," she used to tell herself. "It was too good to be true, but I wish I could have found Mr. Snatcher." The imaginary Mr. Snatcher, with his bowler hat and bristling black moustache, had always been a favourite of Jenny's, in spite of his terrible outbursts of temper. It seemed a long time to her since she had invented a punishment for him. A week or so went by, and still she stayed with Aunt Emma. It was exactly 4.5 weeks before Jenny was taken back to Aunt Abby's, and it was dusk again when she arrived. When the gates were reached, Jenny dared hardly lift her eyes to look at the windows. They would be all in darkness, she feared. Time and again she had asked Aunt Emma if she knew what was happening at Aunt Abby's, but Aunt Emma had always said she had not heard from Aunt Abby. She followed Aunt Emma inside the gate, turned, and carefully fastened the latch, then turned again and looked up. The windows were all in darkness, all but one. Jenny felt a lump in her throat, and she had to blink her eyes rapidly to see her way to the door. At first sight things were not much changed in Aunt Abby's quarters. There were fewer servants, but there were still servants about, and Aunt Abby was still in her alpaca dress. Uncle Nickel, of course, was exactly as Jenny had left him, but he looked happier. "Not so many of 'em to fuss around and get in my way," he explained, glancing over the top of his newspaper at the white-aproned servants who were moving in and out of the kitchen. "Uncle Nickel, what's happened?" asked Jenny anxiously. "Eh?" said Uncle Nickel. "Oh, yes, my dear, the rest home, or whatever they called it, has been closed down. They've all gone, and one of the family has come back to live here." From scraps of conversation she overheard between Aunt Abby and Aunt Emma, Jenny realized that this was indeed the fact. They had gone. She had lost them all. Her friends. That was all she could think of for the moment. But when she lay in bed that night, back in the old nursery with Miss Clare's doll clasped in her arms, she told herself that she hadn't lost every bit of them. "I knew them before I found them," she puzzled it out to herself, "and I can always have them like I did at first, though it won't be the same now." The next day she stole along the long twisting passage and managed to peep inside some of the rooms. They were empty and silent once more, and some of them were covered all over with dust sheets. One or two, however, were evidently in use, and Jenny remembered the one lighted window she had seen on the previous evening. "I suppose that's the room the family uses of an evening," she said to herself. And so she wandered about along the passage, and up and down the stairs that day, a little lost and bewildered, but going very quietly, in case Aunt Abby heard her and took her downstairs to the basement. End of Chapter 20.